share the teachings of the founding father of science of epigenetics, Dr. Joel Wallach. This program is for educational purposes only. The content is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any diseases, nor is it intended to take the place of your primary care physician. Statements in this program have not been evaluated by the FDA. As an empowered individual, you do have options available. We're honored to continue and share the teachings of the founding father of science of epigenetics, Dr. Joel Wallach. This program is for educational purposes only. The content is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any diseases, nor is it intended to take the place of your primary care physician. Statements in this program have not been evaluated by the FDA. As an empowered individual, you do have options available. We're honored to continue and share the teachings of the founding father of science of epigenetics, Dr. Joel Wallach.
Go. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Daily with Doc and Becca. I am so happy to be back, as I have missed you all greatly. I've missed the team, and folks, if you were invited to this program by somebody specific, I want to make sure that you get back with them because they cared enough about you to make sure that you got the information that you're hearing today. And today is going to be a fantastic show, as if you're a parent or a grandparent and you've gotten into a situation where, the medical system has lost hope, well, folks, this is a story of hope where parents were able to not give up on their child. And I am super excited to be sharing this with you as a parent and a grandparent myself. So again, welcome to Daily with Doc and Becca. My name is Becca Dukes. I am a certified naturopathic practitioner, also a certified holistic health coach, and the director of student services for the Institute of Holistic Health. And because of the amazing journey that I have had of going from barely to thriving to now, or barely surviving to now thriving, I just can't stop but make sure that people understand that you are empowered individuals and there are things that you can do all on your own when it comes to your diet, your lifestyle, what goes in to your body and your environment and how that's affecting your health. So listen up, as today we're going to be talking a little bit about all of that. Well, I am super excited, like I said, as today is one of those stories that reminds us how the intelligence of the human body truly is remarkable. When we identify the burdens, remove the interferences, and replenish the body of what it is missing, the body can do some amazing things. So this is a story of parental courage and what happens when the mainstream medicine says there is no hope. What happens when treatments make things worse, and what happens when the parent decides They are going to search for answers no matter what. And that is what this team of scientists, so folks, if you want something that's science-backed, there's scientists on with us today, as they are scientists, which I think is super exciting. They're scientists in not only mechanical and civil engineering for Andy, but between the two of them, they've also got soil and plant and animal scientists below their belt or under their belt, which is what Dr. Wallach did too. So I'm excited to have more people that have that passion on with us as we are carrying on that legacy of a man who's still kicking and breathing, Dr. Joel Wallach. Well, today we have Andy and KARLI Scott from Macro Medical Foundation. They are from Australia, so you're going to love their accents. And they're going to be sharing their story of the journey and the story of their son, Darcy, and one that I believe is really going to encourage families all around the world. So, Andy, KARLI, thank you so much. It's 5 a.m. in the morning there for you. Thank you for joining us and being on with us so early. You both look absolutely fantastic and just vibrant and brilliant. So you must be on some good nutrition yourself.
Too right. Thanks, Becca.
Thank you. We sure are. And look, it's an absolute privilege for us to be here. We've watched a lot of the shows. We just love being part of this community. It's brilliant. So thank you so much for having us.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I had heard little bits about your story, and then you had emailed on and wanted to share the story. And I'm like, yes, absolutely. So folks, just want to do a quick little disclaimer, as this program is not meant to take the place of your primary care physician, nor is it meant to treat, diagnose, or cure disease. It is for educational purposes, folks. The FDA requires me to tell you that. Folks, the good Lord has put on my heart that if you give the body what it's designed to have, the body itself is going to do some remarkable stuff. And that starts with the foundation of the 90 essential nutrients and eliminating those toxins that are all around us, whether we know it or not. So, Andy and KARLI, you're both passionate advocates for restoring health naturally, helping families understand the body's incredible ability to heal. And you've gotten to this point because you've seen it, you've experienced it yourself. And you have put together the Macro Medical Foundation because of this journey with your son, Darcy. So I would like you to share a little bit as you become powerful voices when it comes to nutritional healing, the whole body wellness. And you had a severe crisis going on in your family. Would you just give us a little insight of how or what was going on? And then we'll get deeper into Darcy's story, Tracy's story. Darcy?
Darcy, yeah, it's Darcy.
It's Darcy.
Yeah.
See, I know Tracy too, who is down in Australia most of the time. So,
okay, got you. Yeah, yep, Darcy.
So forgive me. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. Look, it's Darcy was 6 years old at this point, so it was a few years ago. He's now 15. At the time, we also had a 1-year-old little boy. We had an 8-year-old daughter. But a few years prior to this, and I think this is really important, Darcy had a condition called phimosis, and it's where the foreskin is tight. And what happens is children with that problem, they get infections in that area. Mm-hmm. We had taken him to our GP, and he said, oh, look, this is really common in young boys, and it was also common in his son. What you need to do is put on this steroid cream, and then with that, add Chlorsi, which was a topical antibiotic cream. He said the reason you do that is so that, to try and treat these infections, as the steroid helps to stretch the skin so the foreskin, functions properly and the infections will stop. So, look, we didn't think much of it. We thought, yep, that seems fine. We'll do that. And so we had treated that on and off over the next 12 or so months. That's a little bit of background, and it's important with what comes later in the story. So when he was, fast forward to 6 years of age, he was looking quite pale. He had bruising. He was lethargic. He was getting ear infections, which was uncommon, colds that tended to last. So we thought, we'll go and take him and get a blood test done. We just felt something wasn't right. And it was the following day, and I was actually up a ladder painting the gutters on the house. And the hospital calls and says, you have to come in straight away. Your son has a blood cell disease. And immediately, I remember just putting my hand over my mouth and saying to Andrew, he has leukemia. And we packed the kids up in the car, we get into the hospital, and the pediatrician is looking through the blood tests, and he said, look, we can't be sure, but it looks at this stage, it's either leukemia or it's severe aplastic anemia. You would want to hope it's leukemia because he'll have a greater chance of survival if that's the case. So, that for us, it changed everything in a moment.
It's funny, we got to hit rock bottom sometimes before we actually change things up, and it's funny how you got to get to that point before you dismiss all your egos and become humble and start right from ground zero and get it right.
And well, on that too, we were like with the children, they were normal natural births, they were fully breastfed. We live on acreage, we grow most of our own food organically. We felt we were doing things well. And so it was a real shock because we just thought, how did this happen? We'd been trying to do the things that we thought were right.
Wow. So, it's crazy because leukemia, we think, oh, it's really bad. And then when they tell you it's either aplastic anemia or leukemia, and hopefully it's leukemia, that just blows my mind.
Yeah, I think I just burst into tears. It was I could foresee the grief ahead with that, and just thought, I don't want to do this. That was my first thoughts. I don't want to do this. I don't want to be here. I don't want this. I remember pinching myself and thinking, this can't be our reality, can it? And it was, yeah.
I don't want to get this philosophical early on, but it is funny how things get put in front of you in certain ways, and as things unfold, you curse them at the time, but they're so amazing because it's meant to be. It's meant to lead you on a path of discovery and truth.
Oh, absolutely. It's, whenever we get smacked in the face with something, it's definitely a wake-up call, isn't it?
Yeah,
100%.
but not opportunity for learning as well. I think is, rather than get beaten down by the challenge, is say, well, this is put in front of me because I'm supposed to learn something from it. There's something good to come out of this.
But we weren't thinking that at the time. No, not one bit. That came after. But at the time, it was just how are we going to do this? And just frightening, as parents to think. He was very close to no longer being with us, and this tremendous sense of urgency to, we have to fix this and we have to fix this now. It just, the stress, the grief, the shock, all of that, it really is a worse nightmare at the time. So yeah, of course, we feel differently looking back now, and we think, look, it's actually been a tremendous gift to our family to have gone down that road and learn what we've learned, and now to be able to share that and help others now has been terrific. But certainly, at the time, that's not how we felt.
And for people who are average, everyday normal 9 to 5 sort of jobs, to then have to turn around and retool so to speak, for a different problem. It was a big turnaround.
Oh, I bet. I bet. So there's fear. Did you ever feel helplessness?
Ugh, hugely, because the once we got this diagnosis, of course, we're researching straight away, looking at everything, looking at medical papers, looking at whatever we could get our hands on, trying to find answers as to a big driver for us was why and how did this happen. We had a normal, healthy little boy, a healthy family, and we felt we were doing things right. So how did this happen? That was the key driver, because we felt in our gut, if we could find out how this happened or why, we had the capacity to turn it around. But unfortunately, in the mainstream medal that we were locked into, that wasn't there. The doctors were on a different path, and theirs was very much just get on board with the treatment, move forward with the treatment, don't get hung up on the cause. And they just wanted to hook in and get started with something.
Protocol driven. And for this particular, for aplastic anemia, there is actually a protocol, and it is a flow chart. As per most diagnoses, they have a flow chart, they have prescribed drugs, they have prescribed treatment, and it all fits a model. And yeah, so you are felt helpless and locked into that diagnosis and that flow chart, and it does take a lot to step out of that. And we try and encourage, and we hope this interview will encourage people to step out of that and look more broadly. Don't be beholden to your diagnosis.
But that's where obviously it was very tricky in our case in Australia, where in a case like the condition that Darcy had, when we were asking about other options, because they said to us, his only real hope of survival is if he has a bone marrow transplant, because his bone marrow has failed. It's no good. So of course we've got, if I can just paint a little picture here, his body's not making enough blood or platelets or an immune system to survive. And so in the interim, he's on bags of blood and platelets every 7 days to every 10 days. And this goes on and on to support his system and keep him alive while we try and, regenerate the bone marrow. So we're told that unless he has a transplant, he won't survive, and that his best hope would be a sibling transplant. So his brother and sister are tested. They're a perfect match for each other, but they're not a match for Darcy. And so then they tell us that the next best thing is this immunosuppressive drug therapy treatment, where they aim to shut his immune system down. There are a lot of cytotoxic and carcinogenic drugs in that. It's highly toxic, and the success rates are low. But worse than that, the relapse rates for children that then go through this are very high. So it seemed to us that wasn't really a very good option either, because of the side effects of all these drugs. And again, we knew fundamentally that wasn't fixing what caused it. And even if the drugs did help in some way, it was still setting him up then to fail later on. It just didn't address the issue. And so as we were questioning this, the hematologist takes me into a room and says, listen, you might be Darcy's mother, but I am his doctor, and what I say goes. And if you don't get on board with that, we will have no choice but to get child services in. We will have them remove Darcy from your care, and he will be put through the treatment without you. And is that what you want? And I just remember just crying and just thinking, what? How can you possibly do this? And that's exactly what they can do. And so needless to say, they do. And needless to say, he went through the treatment, and then things just got so much worse from there. So much worse.
So you were trapped inside this system. You were bullied. You were threatened if you didn't comply. And here you're scientists looking for a root cause.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no root cause for them. It's just chasing symptoms.
That's
and
right.
Poisoning this little body.
Yeah. And I like a big analogy for me was that, you don't have a headache because you don't have enough aspirin or Panadol or I'm not
Right.
sure your equivalent there, paracetamol.
Excedrin.
Yep, yeah. And so that it doesn't make sense that the treatment involves so much toxicity to solve a problem.
And that was the thing, because he was so unwell already, it just seemed dangerous to be doing that. And when they spoke to us about the reason they wanted to do this treatment, that his immune system was attacking his body and all of this, it just didn't, for us with scientific backgrounds, didn't pass the scientific smell test. It just didn't make sense to us as a logical, sensible, or safe thing to do. But as we questioned that, that's when the relationship between us and the doctors got even worse. And when we tried to say things like, look, he's still got some bone marrow function there, which he did. He was still making some blood and platelets, just not enough to survive, but there was still functionality. And we were saying, look, if we've just got a few cells to rub together, if we can get those cells right, then we have the capacity to reverse it. And that was the language we were using. And they were rolling their eyes at us going, look, you're not understanding, you're not getting the severity of this issue. And we said, we do, but the most logical thing for Darcy long term would be to regenerate his own bone marrow. Because even if he was to have a transplant, that would leave him infertile, at high risks of getting leukemia, bone marrow failure. He'd be on toxic drugs for the rest of his life. All of that, we didn't want that for him. We wanted his original bone marrow to be functioning again. But it was just met with this idea that you guys, you're being neglectful, you're not understanding, and you really just need to hurry up and get on board and move through the treatment. So it made it very hard trying to be in a system. Like you say, we were trapped there, and that it just wasn't, there wasn't common sense there for us.
One aspect of the common sense is that knowing how important and fundamental your bone marrow is. It is, there's a whole big thing about stem cells and the importance of stem cells, and the whole lot of therapies built around stem cells. Your bone marrow is chockers full of stem cells. And it forms the most fundamental, basic part of your immune system, all of your making your blood. Your fundamental life force comes from your bone marrow. So to say that, hang on, your stem cells, or particularly when there's such hype around it, aren't working, but hang on, they were working yesterday. What stops them today? Really, that's the contradiction that really set us on fire.
Well, that I think, and also our background in farming and in agriculture, working in soils and plants and animals, we knew that in animals, we knew about the importance of nutrition. We knew about gut. We knew about minerals. We knew that basic foundations and what we do for animals. And we were thinking, why aren't we just transferring that knowledge across to our son? And that's what we were talking about. And we were actually finding lots of research papers in animals. There was pigs and rats and cattle and all different animals, where we found studies talking about nutrition and gut health and certain vitamins and certain minerals for bone marrow function. And we were trying to share these with the doctors to say, look, there is a relationship here with the gut and nutrition. And again, they rolled their eyes like, they're animal studies. What, you guys aren't understanding.
Completely overlooking the fact that we're mammals as well.
Completely overlooking the basics of, at a cellular level, we come down and we're the same thing. So, all of this stuff was just met with resistance, because ultimately they had a protocol. They wanted that followed. But when we looked at their protocol, nowhere did Darcy return to the normal, healthy Darcy that he was. So that protocol just, it wasn't on the cards for us. We didn't want it. And it made things very, very tricky.
Wow. In pharmaceuticals, they do testing on animals to get the side effects and if it's even going to do anything for humans. Yet here they were refusing to take larger animal studies.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It is awkward in some respects. So there's one good paper there about vitamin E deficiency, and I don't by any means want to get fractional for any listeners, Going fractional and taking a little bit of zinc or a little bit of vitamin E or whatever to solve your problems, not the approach. That's what we call a fractional approach. But there is a paper that was encouraging at the time about vitamin E deficiency in pigs, and they removed vitamin E deficiency. Sorry, they removed vitamin E from the diet in pigs, and when they and the pigs had all the symptoms of aplastic anemia and actually developed aplastic anemia. And when they reintroduced vitamin E into the pig, it was reversed. So that was all very encouraging at the time to see that the vitamin E deficiency. So things can be reversed.
Well, and there was other papers like that, with it, whether it was vitamin E, whether it was the gut microbiome, whether it was a mineral. There were so many papers where they showed that if we remove these minerals, if we change the conditions in this animal, we can create aplastic anemia, and then when we reverse it, we can reverse aplastic anemia. So we knew that that was there.
But, and when they test for vitamin E, so to go back, you don't actually show up vitamin E deficiency because of homeostasis.
So that's what I was going to say. We ended up, because we were going on about nutrition and the gut, and the doctor said, fine, we'll do a blood test then, and we'll check for nutrition status. And we thought, okay, thank you, that would be nice. But of course, it was based on their levels. They did the blood test, they get the results back, and we were thinking, because we were, much more naive at this point, we're thinking, that'll definitely show nutritional deficiencies. And they get the results back, and they said, look, see, everything's in the normal range. It's got nothing to do with nutrition. Now let's hurry up and start the drug therapy. And then we later learned about, blood homeostasis. The body's constantly trying to keep these nutrients in a constant range in the blood. And so the last place deficiency is going to show up is in the blood. And that doesn't give us any indication of what's actually going on in the liver or the kidney or the bone marrow. It doesn't represent that. So, it was a pointless test. And sadly, though, it just gave them more of a hand to say, you guys are on the wrong track. Let's, we're doing the drug therapy now. And that's what happened.
And you basically were giving no choice. You let them do what they're going to do, or you lose your child.
That's right. And it was a case of he just turned 7 in hospital, and, there's no way we could leave him there on his own with that. And that's when, the nightmare just got so much worse, honestly. Once they shut his immune system down completely, he was constantly getting infections and fevers. So then it's just more antibiotics. The high dose steroids absolutely blew his body up. So he developed what they call moon face, where the face swells right up, but his entire body swelled up. He became very distended and distorted. Some of the drugs he was on was making him grow hair all over his face, his ears, his back. He was constantly, rocking forward, nauseous, vomiting. The steroids were so high as well, they'd rotted his bones in his legs, so he was now in a wheelchair. And the degree of toxicity was shutting down his liver and his kidney. And so at about, I think it was about 4 or 5 months in, we just said, stop. And this was the other thing. They didn't want us to look at any of the blood tests because we wanted to see what was going on. And they said, you don't need to look at those. And it was only one day there that I said to one of the nurses, please just show me the blood test. This is our son. And she gave us a copy of it. Now, she ended up getting in trouble, unfortunately, by the doctors after that. But from that blood test, we could see the level of damage that was going on with his liver and his kidney. And we said, look, we both know you need to stop this treatment now, because not only is his bone marrow destroyed, but now his other organs are shutting down. He's going to need a bone marrow transplant and a liver transplant and a kidney transplant. He won't survive. And, so they stopped that treatment. But even things where the creatinine levels in the blood were showing such distress in his organs, and their feedback to us was just make him drink more water to help flush out the toxicity, get him to drink 7 liters of water a day to help flush out the toxins, to give his, liver and kidney more hope. And we just said, are you joking? He's nauseous and vomiting. He can't hold that down. But, that was their solution. Yeah. It was insanity.
it is an awkward spot, and for most people listening, they've got the toys and we're trying to play catch up. So, you are forced into being a subject in so much.
Mhm.
And so until you actually can meet them at a level and question what they're doing on terms and hold them to account, use accountability, and not probability, like actual accountability. So they'll present things to you in terms of probability. This is the most probable outcome or treatment, or most people respond in this way. You go, well, no, that's not me. I'm not a statistic. I'm actually an individual, and these are my circumstances that have come to me from my background or my exposures or my lifestyle or whatever, that make me not a statistic, an individual. How's that treatment actually focused on me?
And what are the stats for me, which they can't
I
answer.
can't answer
So,
that.
of course, at the end of this 5 months, Darcy was then called a non-responder, which I found interesting. It wasn't the medical model saying, well, our treatment's actually failed your son. Darcy was considered, he'd failed. He had not responded to the treatment. And so, at this stage in the background, this is where we're doing all of our research and trying to find answers during this time for a better way. And so we ended up taking him home, and that's where we started then doing what we wanted to do based on the research that we'd done.
So I just want to give a little perspective for those of you who do not know how much 7 liters is. That's 236.7 ounces. And that's what they wanted him to drink a day?
Ridiculous, isn't it?
Because, I mean, most of us have a hard time getting in 128 ounces at 200 pounds. That's just, he would be floating. He'd be drowning in water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, just
How much
such
did he weigh?
a silly, so silly.
How much did he weigh?
Gosh,
Oh,
so maybe 40 kilos,
yeah, no.
kilograms. What's that in pounds? Oh, actually, probably less because he was so maybe 30 kilos, 30 kilograms, probably.
Sorry, just trying to convert that to
Yeah,
pounds.
what's that to pounds? I don't know. No, 40 pounds is 100 kilos. I think so.
66
So-
pounds. 66.
Yeah. Or about 88. 40 kilograms, 88 pounds
Okay.
is what I came up with.
So
But-
probably, it's been less, maybe 30 kilos. Yep.
Okay. Wow. Because they were wanting to drink, 3 to 4 times his body weight. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So how long did he stay in the hospital?
Oh gosh, I was living, so we're in a regional area. Our closest large hospital that dealt with this was about 4 hours drive from our home. And so because of that, I lived down on site at the hospital with Darcy for, gosh, I think 3-4 months, something like that, on site. Andy was back at home with the other 2 children, and then they would sort of come and visit. So, we were split apart. So he was there for that long. And it was just, it was horrible because you're also surrounded by so many other families going through similar things. We were on a ward in the hospital that was hematology and oncology, so a lot of children going through cancer treatments, and just that whole environment was incredibly depressing, and wasn't a hopeful place to be in, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So he was not responding. You were finally able to bring him home because they had basically given up on him?
Yeah, there was nothing else that they could be done, because there was no transplant option at that time. And the transplant, to be clear, wasn't something we really wanted to do anyway because of the infertility and all the other issues that came with that. We were passionate about getting his own body back up and going. And we knew in our hearts that it was possible, but we didn't have, there was no case study. There was no example where we could say, oh, look, you know, this has been done before in this person. Here's a medical paper. Have a look at this. There was nothing to do that, which is why we were met by them with such, like, you parents are silly. You're not understanding. So it was a very lonely journey, definitely. But we felt that there was more. We felt that there was more. And the more research we did, and this is what led us actually to Dr. Wallach. I'd been researching, and there was an email, and I can't remember exactly the specifics. We're going back a little while, but this person had responded, and they said that his wife had severe aplastic anemia, and he'd heard on the radio show a guy by the name of Dr. Wallach, who was in agriculture and a vet, and he was talking about nutrition and the gut, and that he had employed some of these strategies, and he'd seen some improvement in his wife. And you know, that sort of pricked our ears up. And so we started searching down that realm then. And I think because that particularly related to us with our background in agriculture and the agricultural sciences, and once I started, then who is this Dr. Joel Wallach, and started looking him up, and you know, that opened the door.
So this was around 2017, to give a bit of context. Yeah, and it's funny how these stable fundamental principles are so hard to find, even within it.
It was very hard to find that information. But once we found it, you know, I've read most of his books, listened to so many podcasts, but it was him, and there were other people like him. So, you know, Dr. William Elbrecht from way back, that was also, you know, in agriculture and in human science. There was Weston A. Price that, you know, I was reading his books as well, Linus Pauling, Dr. Charles Northern, Carey Reams. There was so many people going back that had made these connections as well with soils and minerals and plant health and animal health and human health, and they'd joined the dots, and they'd received a lot of scrutiny because of that by the medical model and suppression and all of that. But the more we went down that hole, the more we just went, this makes absolute sense, and this is what we should be doing. And then getting frustrated at why this information was so suppressed and so difficult to find. But, you know, once we then started looking at, okay, let's go, what we thought, you know, we were, like I said, growing food organically. We have a cattle farm, so we eat, you know, grass-fed beef. We have our own chooks in the backyard. You know, we thought we were doing things well, but we'd missed the mark when it came to looking at problem foods that are rubbing out the gut lining, SIBO, these fundamentals, a role that Chlorsigg, so that drug I mentioned earlier, this antibiotic that we had used. Now, when we were looking for causes, this was the only thing really. We thought, you know, our kids had been well. He had this Chlorsigg, and this was the really upsetting part. When we went back and had a look at this Chlorsigg drug, it had a black box warning on it, and it said may cause hematological disorders, including severe aplastic anemia. And when I read that, my heart just absolutely sunk, because I thought, oh my goodness, we had given this to our child. We thought it was a fairly harmless topical antibiotic. And of course, then as we went down the research on that particular drug and the active ingredient being chloramiphenicol, we realized the relationship between that drug and the bone marrow failure that our son had acquired because of it. And there were a lot of animal studies on that. And of course, when we showed that to the doctors as well, when we were looking for causes, because they said to us, forget the cause, even if it takes you 10 years to find it, it won't matter, because it doesn't change the fact that nothing can be done and he needs a transplant. And we disagreed with that. And when we said, look, we believe this is the cause, and we showed them the information and lots of research papers in animals and in humans, because this drug actually used to be used as an IV antibiotic, and it got taken off the shelf because of the links to bone marrow failure that it caused. But when we showed them that, they're like, no, it wouldn't be that. He wouldn't have had enough. And then we had more papers showing that it's actually not dependent on dose. The cream gets obviously into the bloodstream. The bloodstream bypasses the gut. It upsets the delicate flora in the gut. And we know we have microbes in there that are doing all sorts of amazing things for us all the time, from detoxing to making vitamins to making neurotransmitters and hormones and doing all of these amazing things. And when certain strains of those get wiped out, certain systems in the body can shut down. And that's exactly what had happened with Darcy.
Wow. So, you know, this just goes to folks, you need to read that insert that comes with your pharmaceutical and don't think that's not going to happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And, you know, and that was a horrible feeling that we'd given this to our child and no one had said anything. The GP didn't say, oh, by the way, your child could end up with bone marrow failure if you use this.
And it also brings in underreporting. So here we've got like a drug adverse drug reaction reporting system. UK have got similar, I think, in the US as well. But you know, the amount of effort that we tried and said, hey, well, let's at least get this recognised as an adverse reaction. And they said, oh no, there's not enough evidence.
It was never reported.
So underreporting is a huge thing in the pharmaceutical industry of adverse reactions.
And on that note, there was another little boy we worked with a couple of years later that also had bone marrow failure. He'd been through the system. He'd done 4 rounds of drug therapy. He was left destroyed, the same as Darcy. And we ended up working with that little boy's mum, and she was amazing. She followed everything to the T. We said, look, we can't promise anything. This is what we did with our son. Try this. She was looking for options because he was dying, and she did everything right, and her son made a full recovery as well. So there's 2 cases, but of interest in that, he had also had Clausig used on him as well.
Yet they will not take the report.
No.
That's so infuriating.
Mm.
So, oh goodness. So you'd found Dr. Wallach. You already knew the importance of nutrition, using it on the farm. You discovered as scientists the science of epigenetics?
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. Yep. And this was actually one other thing the doctors said to us, oh, look, it could be genetic. And we went, well, that makes no sense because there was no history in our family, none in Andy's family. And they said, oh, yeah, but it's when you two like come together and Darcy's genetics. And we just went, not buying that. And they did all this genetic testing and eventually came back and said, oh, no, we can't find the gene. Now, of interest again, the other little boy that we worked with, we had been communicating for about, it was a few months. She lives many hours from us. Lovely person, lovely mum. And anyway, she rang up one day and she was quite upset. And I said, oh, goodness, what's happened? I thought, you know, the little boy may have passed away. And she said, no, they've identified the gene that's caused his aplastic anemia. They found the gene. They said it's genetic. You know, so what we're doing is not going to work. I said, forget it. Don't worry about that. We're going to move forward with what we're doing. Just leave it. Don't worry about it. And of course, you know, we kept doing what we're doing. And like I said, he made a full recovery. So it's really important people don't get hung up on, you know, it's in your genes and not just forget it.
Or convinced to spend huge amounts of money on genetic testing that's not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. And because we know that the environment of the cell is not getting what it needs, the genes will mutate as a response. You know, that's well understood. Dr. Wallach, Bruce Lipton, they've done the work on that. So we knew that these mutations were secondary to the cause, not the primary cause themselves.
And that goes right to the body's intelligence, where the body is designed to heal, but healing requires those raw materials, and you cannot build health without nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Wow.
No,
So
we like the analogy of Lego. I presume you've got Lego. I think the whole world's got Lego.
yeah.
Yeah. That, you know, you've got the kit, you've got the Lego kit, and you've got the instructions. But if you take half the blocks away, you're not going to build the model.
Right.
Mm.
Right.
You know, and that's the same with us. We have those instructions are there. They're always there. But if we don't have the raw materials, we can't build what we want to build in the body. We can't repair it.
Right. And those raw materials include minerals. They include the vitamins. They include the amino acids, the essential fatty acids. But it also includes removing that toxic burden.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does. And so that was for us, it really was, okay, let's take out things that can be impairing the ability to absorb nutrition. That was primary. So that, you know, whole family went gluten-free. And that was interesting because having been in agriculture and myself, I grew up on a wheat farm. We grew wheat and barley and oats and all of those things. And so, you know, I'd been eating those for 40 years. And I used to look at the gluten-free aisle in the shops and think, aha, that's, you know, what a joke. We've been eating this stuff forever. And, you know, I was very humbled to realize that actually, no, that the damage that was happening, rubbing out the gut lining. And actually, on that note, when Das was first diagnosed and we were looking for alternatives, we went to nutritionists and naturopaths and iridology and chiropractor and kinesiology and acupuncture. And, you know, we went exploring everywhere for answers. And while all of those had a little bit of something to offer, there wasn't something that put it all together. And so we were still looking, which is why, you know, we kept having that, I guess, pressure on because we hadn't found those answers. Because on that point, we went to I think she was a functional naturopath, and she said, well, look, we'll do a blood test with Darcy and we'll be able to see if there's any foods that he's allergic to or that we should remove. And so they did the blood test and we're sitting there waiting, and comes back and she says, oh, no, it's perfect. She doesn't have any problems with anything. He can eat all of those things. And we just went, no, I don't think so. We're removing, you know, X, Y, and Z from the diet. So gluten was out, no wheat, barley, oats, rye, no seed oils, which we didn't use anyway. All processed things were out, all sugar was out. You know, and like I said, we didn't have a bad diet. The kids weren't eating lollies. We weren't eating or drinking soft drinks. I think you guys call them soda pops. We didn't have that sort of stuff, but, you know, we became very vigilant on that. It was salad and vegetables, and from the garden, it was meat, it was raw eggs and whey proteins and chia puddings, all of this good stuff, and just removing any of those things that were potentially
substituting. Will go in. You know, it doesn't mean to, you know, cut out wheat, barley, oats, and rye that you still can't have a cake. I mean, there are really good substitutes you can do to that aren't harmful to the gut. So, you know, just substituting rather than thinking I'll have to go without is a really key.
Yeah, and I think key with children as well, because we were still trying to have Darcy feel like he was still having some things that he could enjoy as a child. So making those alterations and substitutions for sure, you know, using stevia or xylitol instead of sugar, and, you know, making sure we had plenty of lard, ghee, tallow, butter. What else are we substituting? That was sort of the main things, taking out.
And then get on to substituting grains, you know, ditch wheat, barley, oats, and rye for.
And buckwheat.
Buckwheat for, you know, almond meal or.
There was more rice, but I think initially we pretty much, I think we took grains out completely initially, just because they break down to sugar, and we didn't need that. So it was really more of a keto style diet. Lots of whey protein and raw eggs and good stuff. We tried to make stuff that was still yummy that he enjoyed, and he was very good at, you know, wanting to get better and doing what he needed to do. You know, he was not the sort of kid that we had to worry about, oh, he's going to go to a birthday party and, you know, eat a heap of gluten and all that. We didn't have to worry about that. He was very good with wanting to get better. And he always said, and I think this is really important too, you know, in the worries that we carried with trying to get him better, he would always say, I know I'm going to get better. I'm not going to die from this. I'm going to be fine. You know, Mum and Dad, stop worrying. I'm going to be fine. And, you know, which was lovely to hear. He always remained positive, and that mindset of healing is so important as well. Hugely important.
And that, I'm glad that you brought that up, because so many people are so tied to what's wrong with them. They don't see that there's hope of not having to deal with it anymore, and they just accept it. this is just the way life is. This is what I'm going to die from. Yet Darcy, it's like, this isn't, I'm not going to die from this. He still had that hope. And I love that, which brings me to my next question is, when did you first start seeing the improvement that gave you hope?
Yeah, I think we're thinking about this just a few hours ago, and it was somewhere between the 8-week, 12-week mark, I would say. Once we'd cut out the gluten, particularly, that was a major player. And this is what links it back to the phimosis that he had in the first place when he was younger. Why wasn't the foreskin growing properly? That was a red flag then, that the body wasn't getting the raw materials that it needed. So once we'd taken that gluten out, and we were on, and even before we found the longevity products and Dr. Wallach, we were, at the, I think you guys call it a drugstore, a chemist. We were, getting all these vitamins and minerals and supplements. We had like a pharmacy in our pantry of all of these supplements, trying to work out ratios and absorption rates and all of this sort of stuff. So it was such a blessing to find what Dr. Wallach had put together with everything already there in the right ratios for body weight. Was just such a blessing and highly absorptive. And so once we started him on that and having taken out the gluten, the recovery happened quite quickly. And so what we noticed was, when we'd get the blood test, we would look at what's called the reticulocyte count. And the reticulocytes are the baby blood cells from the bone marrow. So when you have a bone marrow failure, those reticulocytes drop right down. I think he's got down to about 20. They should be somewhere between 50 and 100, because it's a measure of how well is your bone marrow making blood cells. So the reticulocytes are the baby blood cells. So when we started seeing that number climbing up, that was evidence that the bone marrow was kicking in. It was revving back up again, and it was starting to generate his own blood. And that was such a tremendous thing to see, because we were told that those numbers just would not come up. And just to see them coming up and that his body was responding was just such a turnaround for us. And we knew then, like, we're onto something here. He's going to be all right. We're on the right track.
So Becca, that I have to say, that was the end of the first saga when he had that recovery. But subsequently, several years later, there was a relapse, which was only just fairly recently, within the last couple of years. But then having to go back and do other learnings, and this is where we were stumped. Why we've done everything. We've had a recovery, but we
stayed on the nutrition. We stayed with the diet, but there was also that fear, because we knew that drug treatment caused relapses. That was always there in the back of our mind. Is he now going to relapse because that happened? And sure enough, it was about 5 years later that relapse did happen. And we just thought, oh no, not again. And sadly, as soon as he did relapse, and we end up back in hospital, and we said, there's no way we'll be doing that drug treatment again. And because they knew that we'd taken him home and done the changes that we'd done, and he had fully recovered, they had that information, they knew that. But they said, no, we do Western medicine here. He will be going through that drug treatment again, with or without you. And I just remember feeling absolutely sick to my stomach, thinking, how can you possibly suggest such a thing when you know the complete destruction of his body and how broken it was last time? In your own words, you called him a non-responder to the treatment. And yet, because we're Western medicine and that's what we do, we're just going to do that again. And so that was absolutely horrible. We were able to stave that off to a degree. And this time, the second time round, so we're doing the nutrition. We've got all the problem foods out. We've treated for SIBO as well. We've done the I-26. We've done the ultimate microbiomes. We've done all the probiotics. We've done the GI cleanse. We're doing all.
Oh, hold on. Can you unmute? There we go.
Hear us now?
So you've done the GI cleanse.
Yes, we'd been doing all of these things because we knew the importance of making sure that the gut flora was right. And we knew that if there were overgrowths in the gut, those overgrowths or the toxins and things that they create damage the gut lining and cause leaky gut as well. So, you know, we were cautious of that and we'd been treating for all of that. And yet we just didn't see any improvement month after month. He was still on blood transfusions. And in the end, he'd had about anywhere between 70 to 80 blood transfusions during this time, which was not ideal, obviously, because then there's so much iron that comes in, aside from all the contaminants that are coming in, tremendous amounts of iron with every bag of blood. That iron then deposits on the liver and the heart and the spleen, and then those organs start to shut down. So it's not a case where you can go, well, that's all right, we'll just live on blood transfusions. You can't, because eventually they'll kill you. You can't not have the blood transfusions because you can't live without blood. So there's an urgency there to find a solution within a set sort of time frame. And that's where we went back deeper into looking at the gut, and we actually did SIBO testing, so the breath testing to test for SIBO, and also a microbiome analysis through a stool test to find answers out of that.
And when we were stumped, we actually reached out to
Pharmacist Ben.
To Pharmacist Ben. So
Yeah.
thank you, Pharmacist Ben. And he encouraged us to dig deeper.
He said, you're on the right track, but you've missed something in the gut.
There's only so many ways something can actually get in the blood and upset the immune system, and it's got to be coming in through the gut.
Yeah. So he encouraged, go and actually get a test done.
Go and do another test.
Yep. And we did. And that's when we found this time it was what's called a methanogenic archaea overgrowth in the gut. And this is why these other products haven't worked, because they're not, the archaea responds differently to bacteria and fungi and protozoa and parasites. They all have different responses.
And when you look up how do you cure methanogenic archaea, chloramiphenicol is one of the things that it is most resistant to. So when you use a topical antibiotic, in our case it was topical, or chloramiphenicol, you actually select for it to set up an environment for methanogenic archaea
to overgrow. And then it just creates this environment in the gut where all your good guys can't survive in there. So methanogenic archaea is a normal part of our gut flora. We all have it. But when it becomes in abundant levels and creates such an environment that your good guys can't survive, and it's producing a lot of toxicity, that toxicity there is creating the leaks in the gut, causing that inflammation. Those toxins and undigested food and all those other things are then leaking in to the blood. And this is the constant stimulus coming in that's not allowing the body to heal, because the blood is dirty and it's toxic. And while ever that was happening, it didn't matter how much nutrition, how many different herbs we tried, how much hyperbaric chamber or sauna or any of these other things we were doing, as long as that overgrowth was still there, these other treatments weren't going to work.
Oh my goodness. I know that we could probably go on for another hour, but as we're wrapping this up, it's like, folks, the body can do some amazing things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A pharmaceutical almost killed him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And more pharmaceuticals made him so much worse.
And I think it goes to the fundamental basic principles that you yourself, Becca, and the show promotes. You know, get rid of the crap out of the air, crap out of the water, crap out of the food, and put the right things in, but also to make sure that that environment is working as it should be. You know, and if it's not, and you're not getting the results, dig deeper. It is there.
There'll always be a cause. There's always drivers there, but it is our job to try and find what those drivers are, what that stimulus is that's keeping that disease active, and identify it, remove it, and then replace the body with the raw materials that it needs. It's so fundamental.
It is fundamental. And, you know, it makes me think, you know, health freedom begins with health literacy. We've got
absolutely.
to know, and it's not being taught. So folks, if you are hearing this video, share it with somebody, because they're not going to hear this information from anyone else. And it's not about rebellion. It's about responsibility and taking responsibility for our own health and that of our families, especially if you're parents, grandparents, training them up so that they have that opportunity. We're not chemical deficient. We're not pharmaceutical deficient. We just want to leave every family with the information that they need, that there is hope and that there is something that you yourself can do. And that's one thing that this episode gives proof of, that hopelessness is not helplessness. Feeling helpless does not mean there's no hope. That's what I wanted to say.
That's exactly
Wow.
right.
Andy, KARLI, thank you so much. And we do have a couple hands raised. Do you have time for a couple questions or comments?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
Fantastic.
And that's the thing I love about this community, and what we're trying to do as well, is just get the message out there. And so wherever we can spread the message, and help people take questions, we're up for it.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, let's go to Keely first. Keely, go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah,
Now,
hello.
Keely is one of those advocates that just does not give up and loves to take on a medical system. So, Keely,
Well,
go for it.
thank you, you two, for coming on in order to speak to the world about this. Because as a medical and a legal advocate in the U.S., I'm in front and center in the middle of a lot of these discussions. So it's really about finding the right person, that will live according to the Hippocratic Oath in integrity, on integrity, and I know that I have struggled a lot because I support individuals making decisions for their life and fighting the allopathic medical system at every turn. It is one of my absolute passions. So it doesn't matter if it's a cardiologist or it's a neurologist, if it happens to be dealing with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's really the courage that you have to speak out is needed more than you can imagine. So I want to honor you that God gave you the child and gave him the right parents that had the devotion, belief, and faith to believe in miracles and know that God gave us everything that we needed, that we are not chemically and or pharmaceutically deficient, but he gave that child to you because he knew that he was going to use you for a purpose greater than yourself. So that's the first thing I wanted to acknowledge you for. The other one is in Australia, given the fact we're in the United States, what we find is that so many people, when they're in the system, that the doctors continue to do what they're doing because it's a trial, and they utilize that patient as a guinea pig in the name of their own research. And it is a travesty. My question to you is, in Australia, do you have a path where you can make a determination prior to that if the patient isn't responding, that you can move them into a palliative care situation where you could take them out of the system or not?
Yeah.
Good
So
question.
if I could, there's a couple of aspects to that. One is that over the last few years, the overreach of a lot of governments has really come to light, and so that sort of also set me on a side quest about who we are and who governments view us as. So there are some really good people investigating this in the US. Cal Washington, for example, if you YouTube him, he'll pick apart who you are and who you appear to them as. So that's the first aspect. The second aspect is you've got to appear like you've got to play nice. I mean, they've got the toys, they've got the blood bank, they've got the the gear that when you're in a bad shape, they've got some pretty neat gear, and so you've got to play nice. But to meet them on par with what, like the statistic aspect, you're not a statistic. You're saying that this treatment will cure me on a probability. That's not actually that's not 100%. I want 100%. So you can tackle it on that aspect. The other one is we have a access to a rule that is about, it's called GILX competency. So when a child is able to show that they are competent, they can then take charge of their own healthcare. So that basically is that if they, well,
look, that's in theory. We never actually tried that, but we had heard, try under GILX competency. At the point where Darcy was 6, 7 years old, very difficult to say that would float.
Yeah.
When he relapsed, he was 12. And, he certainly did not want any treatment. But again, his views were ignored. So it really wasn't for us until we could show and demonstrate to them that you are actually making him worse. And if we continue on your path, our child is highly likely to die now based on the evidence that we have. You and I both know this needs to stop. That did stop further treatment in that respect for Darcy. But, I certainly know of cases where treatment has continued to be pushed, the child has died, and there is just no accountability.
And I also, Kelly, to answer that, is that the biggest thing to stop a treatment or turn it around is show improvement. If you can work yourself into the position where you can, and it does take a lot to support someone in hospital, bringing them the right meals,
Yeah, we didn't let Darcy eat hospital food. That was, we were controlling all of that.
Yeah, to do that, particularly when you're not in your own kitchen, is a big job. But you've got to show the improvement, and that you can. You've got this. And look, there's such a community out there as well. Get people to reach out. The dailies with docs. Cover it. Listen. Yeah, there is so much information, and like ourselves there to try and help.
And I think that was the thing when we could start to show like the reticulocyte count and show them, well, look, since we've been doing what we've been doing, these numbers are starting to improve. Or when it came to the case of looking at the methogenic archaea, we had to try and stop them doing another round of treatment. We had evidence then of these SIBO tests and stool tests, even though that was really outside of their realm, we'd back that up with science papers and medical papers showing the links between dysbiosis and overgrowth of methane and bone marrow suppression and not functioning properly. So we were showing them the data that we had with Darcy, how that links, because it was outside of their realm, and that if we could potentially treat this, and there's a lot of convincing that had to be done, because they were like, no, it wouldn't be that, wouldn't be in his gut. And we're going, well, let's treat that and we'll see what happens. And then, we were getting the weekly blood tests, and we could see, well, look, when we treat that, he can actually hold his own blood levels, and we're not needing transfusion. So this is the path we need to be on.
And when you can present case studies, for us, we were the second time round in a relapse, and when we'd actually started to drill down into the actual problem in the gut, there was a case study of a Asian guy that had stomach upsets, and then every time he presented at a hospital and was given a round of antibiotics, there was actually a response in reticulocytes and relief from aplastic anemia. And so to be able to research and find those supporting evidence, and you can use some really great facilities like Sci-Hub to get to those research papers, to meet them at their own game.
Have some proof with you for your case. So I looked a lot through PubMed, Google Scholar. There's so much information on there, and being able to provide that and have some proof. If you just go in with, I think we should be doing this because, I think they like, they're scientific, that it speaks their language. And I think that was the fortunate thing for us really in this. And we have had other people say, and thank you for those beautiful, kind words that you said about us being Darcy's parents, and other people that have said, look, if we didn't have the scientific background, that things would have been different. Parents, friends that we know that don't have that background have said, look, that if that had been our child, that we wouldn't have known what to do, and they wouldn't still be here today. So having for us scientific literacy, just to be able to pull apart scientific papers and understand the language, because it is written in a different language. Those papers, there's a lot of Latin, there's a lot of terminology that we were familiar with our backgrounds in biochemistry and biology and cells and genetics, that we could sort of interpret and make sense of these papers. That is about, definitely for a lot of people, is the way that these papers are written. Without that scientific background, it's hard.
I would say language is key.
I understand. Totally understand. I have had great success here in the United States. The only time it gets a little bit tricky when we're dealing with children, because you have to have the right, practitioner, so to speak. But for all of the adult issues, is once we become a power of attorney, we can actually go in and basically correct that system for us here in the States. So I was wondering, is that one of the differentiators of being in the United States versus Australia, or not?
Sorry, the parent and guardian status versus that of a mother or father.
Well, what happens is, here in the States, I'll have an individual ask me to advocate on their behalf, okay? And they're like, I'm not doing this treatment. I don't want to do this. I actually go in and I'm the mediator in between the system, and basically telling them that these are what this patient wants, and I will find the physician that will actually give them they're going to do what that patient tells them they're going to do, or they're going to put that authority in my hand, by which I will negotiate on their behalf. It's sort of like what an ombudsman would do here in the US hospitals versus not. But as an adult, you have the right to decide, and you can basically reject any modality that they want you to go to. Where it gets tricky is with the child, and it's about having the right practitioner.
There's a guy in a Canadian, Christopher James, and he really goes down and I've heard the argument used of property. So we get back to basics. So he who creates owns. So if you're going to show that you have some sort of right to administer, how do you show some sort of ownership? So mum and dad created the son or daughter. So what then gives that entity any right to intervene into a property dispute?
Yeah, I think it has to do a lot with our constitutional laws and how they're interpreted, because, here in the States, we're protected by our Constitution, our Bill of Rights and Declaration, which basically says that, we're all created equal, and these children are, they're given to us by God, and then you have to get through the legal system. So I just appreciate, sort of asking these questions to really see what those differentiators are, because here in the United States, people don't realize we have so much more power if we are willing to challenge the institution, and all institutions are totally steeped in their own dysfunction to drive their ability, to drive their power and their manipulation through, their particular mindset. We do not have to accept it. We don't have to, we do have to fight it. And if we want our freedom and our health freedom, we all have to stand up together in great courage. And I just appreciate the fact that you've come on, you've demonstrated what faith is, what courage is, what absolute belief is. And thank God that your child as well. And I would just leave you with, can you tell us how the medical system and the establishment is dealing now, given the fact that you've taken the journey with your son and he is where he is? And God bless you.
Thank you so much for those beautiful words. So we've got Darcy that's showed improvement twice when we were told he wouldn't. Then, like I said earlier, the other little boy from Sydney that we worked with, and he also made a full recovery. So that's 3 times now out of 3. So there's 2 major hospitals in Australia where the hematology units have seen this happen. They know that it can happen. But that hasn't actually changed anything, sadly. So the next child that goes to hospital with this condition is still going to be told exactly what we were told, that your child will die without a transplant. The next best thing we can do is the drug therapies. So, in our views, obviously we feel like when you know better, you should do better. But we also know from the medical model that even when they know this, there's no moral, ethical, or legal obligation to share that information with anybody. And I think that's what is so terribly wrong, and that's what we feel is is so important, why we need to step up and we need to talk about this so that other parents know that when they're told by their medical profession that your child or you have this condition, this is the only way forward, this is the only thing you can do, that we want people to be able to go, yeah, I don't think so. I'm going to look elsewhere.
Yeah.
It's really important because you're not, and this is what people said to us when, you know, family and friends around us, when we were going through this, they were saying, you know, well, these guys are the experts, the hematologists, your doctors, they're the specialists, they're the experts. They would know. And that's how a lot of people feel. If anyone knew how to reverse this or cure this, they would know and they would be doing it. But we're here to say, even if they do know, they're not going to do it because there's a whole industry to protect, there's egos to protect, there's jobs to protect. So
this is where two worlds diverge. Those that are willing to uncover the truth and work at the basic fundamental level, and those that are doctor for me is indoctrinated. Those that are have spelling over them that dictates the way that they think and the protocols that they follow.
And of course, it'd be like the US as well here. If doctors don't stick to protocol and they don't do what they're told to do and follow the flow chart, then they're out. They lose their job. And so for their own self-preservation, they're going to do what they've been taught and told to do, which is incredibly unfortunate because it means that people are suffering needlessly and people are dying needlessly.
And that's where the importance of this community, and we hope to, you know, do it proud and by joining in and doing what we're trying to do as well with you guys, is spread the word, and that every other listener that sees or comes across these sorts of things can you know, forward it on to someone in need. And
I think it is really important on that note that our body is divinely created. It is highly, highly intelligent. And that's my body, that's your body, that's Darcy's body. That is, every body is like that. I think some people feel like, oh, well, my condition's different. Or, you know, I've tried everything and that didn't happen. No, your body is also very intelligently created. 90% of the work is already done for you. Okay, that's in your creation. You just need to bring the 10% with your diet, your mindset of knowing, and not, it's beyond a belief, it's a knowing. You must know that your body is so intelligent, it grew itself all by itself from a single cell, and it is designed to heal and to reverse disease. So have that knowing, and then bring in the 10% of removing the burdens, replenish the body, and then watch the magic happen.
I'd like to say there were 2 cells involved.
I agree.
Thank you so much.
1-2 cell card.
Another
goodness.
Another question.
So there is one question that was asked like super early in the show is, how is Darcy now?
He's great. He's a teenager and it's 6 o'clock just after in the morning and he's in bed. But yeah, he's good. He's tall, he's healthy. He's got a great sense of humor. He he's lovely. He loves his life. He's a good kid.
He loves his art.
He loves his art. He's very creative, very, very creative. Is a great drawer, artist, which has been amazing for him because he's you know, spent a lot of time was sedentary, you know, missing out on a lot of things, sports and all of that other kids would have done. But a skill, a gift that he has is art, and he does a lot of that. So that's his passion, and yeah, he's a good kid.
Well, we would love to see some of his art someday, soon. Let's go to AJ, who has his hand up. AJ?
Now, Becca stole my thunder. I was going to ask that question for the folks that had asked it earlier, but you know, I think you're doing us a disservice by not showing us a picture. But just to let you know that I'm definitely very proud that you are carrying Dr. Wallach's message so powerfully in your country. And I'm very proud to have met you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yes, absolutely. And let's go one more question. Miriam, go ahead and unmute.
My question is, what did you add to Darcy's protocol after his relapse that ultimately helped him recover?
Excellent question. Yes. So once we'd identified this methanogenic overgrowth, that's where we got really stuck, because the research that we'd found on that was that it can be very, very difficult to kill or suppress. And in some cases, the outcomes weren't great with that. So trying to come up with a protocol to do that was tricky. Again, down the research we went with looking for, okay, how do we try and kill the methanogenic archaea without destroying all of his gut? So essentially, this is what we did was.
Well, yeah. So there are a couple of institutes, gastro institutes, that talk about trying to get on top of SIBO, and they have some antibiotic protocols. We did use those antibiotic protocols initially to show that there is response, that we're on the right track to. So this is helping with Keely's earlier comments, that once we had the research paper that said that this guy had intestinal issues and got relief from antibiotics, and we were able to show that linkage through the data. And then we did try some recognized antibiotic protocols, but only really just to show a response.
It wasn't, we didn't want him taking more antibiotics, because obviously this had caused the problem in the first place. And these antibiotics as well were known to suppress bone marrow function. So that we didn't want that. But what we had to do was show the doctors that we believe that this is the underlying cause or driver this time of his relapse. And if we can show that we can knock that down and he responds, then that's the pathway we need to be on, not more drug therapies. But in order to do that, we couldn't say, so we're putting together this herbal combination, blah, 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 wasn't going to float. We had to, again, use their tools. So we did the research on what antibiotic combinations were shown to work to some degree for this archaea. And then we asked the doctors to supply that, which was quite a big job, because they don't normally deal in this realm and they don't deal with these particular antibiotics. And
a little bit of a laugh there, because Joel Wallach's story about having relief from his from an eye twitch with some
pellets.
with calf pellets. Well, one of these antibiotics for methanogenic archaea was actually a calf scouring tablets. So
yeah, gentamicin, wasn't it?
Yeah. But yet it's so hard to get.
Yeah. And so they had to have a board meeting to decide whether they could actually give us these particular antibiotics that we were after. Anyway, they send them in the mail, we get them, we put Darcy on them, and within about 7 days, we saw the colour come right back into his face. So we knew, and it was like, oh my goodness, thank you. This is what we needed to show. We needed to be able to prove that if we knocked this down, that he would improve. We had a blood test then to show that the reticulocytes were going up, so it was working. Now, it wasn't a solution because we only did that for 10 to 14 days. We didn't want him on it any longer than that. And at that point, then the numbers started falling back down. We sent the data to the doctors showing, look, here's the response. We believe we're on the right track with this. And they said, oh, look, it just could be coincidence. I think it was something like that. I went, oh my gosh, are you joking? So, okay, can you please send us another 2 antibiotics, because you have to alter them because of resistance. These are the 2 we need this time. They sent them. We did the experiment again for another 10 to 14 days. And again, he started making his own blood. The color came back in his face. We said, okay, that's twice. We can see this is the case. We can't do it using these antibiotics. We don't want these in Darcy. Sorry, really long way to answer the question. Then it was like, how do we find a natural treatment to do this? And I ended up making up capsules with clove, thyme, and oregano essential oil with MCT, just oil to fill that capsule. So I had that in combination with an allicin product called Alimed, which was a very high strength allicin from onions that actually came from New Zealand. We used berberine, HCl, because we had to try and break down the biofilms that grow around. See, this methanogenic archaea creates its own environment and its own protective housing under what they call biofilms that protect them from being destroyed. So we had to not only try and kill the archaea, but their biofilm as well. So we're also using NAC, berberine HCl, Alimed, and making these specific oil capsules. I was doing that with him twice a day. And I think we did that for about 2 to 3 weeks. And hallelujah, the color came back in his face and his lips, and his numbers were going up. And
No.
that was the end of blood transfusions and platelet transfusions and
that was tackling, but also you've got to have a strict diet as well. You don't want to feed
you don't want to feed that
methyogenic archaea with carbohydrates.
So yeah,
Wow.
that's important.
Nancy comments, grateful for your fight, for saving your son, and for fighting for justice. Make a movie.
Yeah, I'd love to. Love to.
And let's go ahead and go to Albert. Albert, final question, my friend.
No, this is not a question, but
Uh-oh. Albert, I'm going to turn your video off and ask that one more time.
Can see and hear.
Okay,
Can you hear me
start
all
from the
right
beginning?
now?
Yes.
Right. I just wanted to say thank Andy and KARLI, thank you very much for what you've shared with us here tonight. I'm certainly going to be sending this show to a couple of people around South Africa. So well done for everything that you've done. There's so many truths that you've shared here tonight. Thank you.
Thanks
Thanks,
you very
Albert.
much.
Wonderful.
We appreciate that.
Spread the word. Thank you.
Yeah, and look, we are just so grateful for the people that have gone before. You know, the names I was talking about, Bruce Lipton, Weston Price, Charles Northern, all of these guys, Joel Wallach, my goodness, you know, what he's put up with to try and get his message out. And, you know, it's so true, and it's such an important mission to be on, we feel, to be a voice for this, because it's so sad. And I know the stats in America are terrible with chronic disease, and they're absolutely shocking here with the number of people that are suffering, their kids are suffering, and it's so sad and tragic because it's needless. And with that knowledge, and I encourage people, I think, to try and put the noise aside when, you know, the mainstream medical doctors are telling them, this is your diagnosis, this is your treatment, this is all that can be done. Please put that aside. Know that that's one perspective coming from a medical model that's not designed to serve you or your family or your children. It's a self-serving model. And if you want true health, you want to prevent, and please, you know, employ these strategies to prevent happening to your child what happened to ours. It's so much easier if you can stay well, keep your kids well, and staying out of the system at this stage is really the best way to go. Don't interface with them if you don't have to. And, you know, honestly, the best way, unless you've got a broken arm or a broken leg, look, fabulous on that front. But for anything chronic, degenerative, please stop it before it starts, particularly with children, so they don't have to go into the system and be put through and suffer what Darcy suffered.
Prevention's better than cure.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Marilyn has her hand up now. Marilyn?
Yeah. Okay. Can you guys hear me now? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
In 1990, I was diagnosed with pernicious anemia. I was young though, didn't think nothing of it. All they did was run test after test after test. And even naturopaths would give me just folic acid and B12 shots. So I just went on just my life, and just one thing after another, eventually got into the alternative medicine and Dr. Wallach and everything in the last 6 years. And I had chronic fatigue for so long, and I'm sure that was all part of it. I had no idea it was gluten. And what's interesting is it's in the naturopathic world too. They don't know how to address it. So I think your message is going to be very important.
Actually, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Marilyn. And our experience was similar as well. You know, like I said earlier, we went down that route looking at naturopath and functional medicine, and we found a lot of it was quite, rather than treating the symptom with drugs, we're going to treat with take this vitamin or take this mineral. It was still too fractionated to get the response that we needed.
And I'm seeing that a lot of supplements are actually manufactured by the same companies making the pharmaceuticals. And, you know, I can't help but see a parallel in the naturopath industry here in Australia as the traditional allopathic system. You know, they're following a same sort of a playbook in some respects, which is bad, because, you know, at least we thought naturopaths were a little bit, you know, a choice. But it doesn't seem.
And there are, in the sense that, you know, it was a way that wasn't going to do harm, and you know, the, you know, vitamins and minerals and herbs and things are all very helpful. But what we found is that, you know, these things can be helpful, but not until the underlying foundations are addressed. There's no point giving somebody particular herbs for their hormones, or, you know, zinc or selenium supplement if they're still eating foods that have rubbed out the gut lining and they've got overgrowths of bacteria or archaea in their gut. It's just pointless. And so, yeah, I think we really
Right,
have
but
to.
you know what they don't address is the stomach is the first spot. And they never told me that I just need salt increase and like apple cider vinegar. That was the first thing to get the iron even, the absorption from there.
Yeah.
Not even the
Or
intestine.
even, yeah, and looking at that, you know, I know people too that have had iron deficiencies. It's like, oh, we'll go and get an iron infusion, or take iron. And it's like, no, clearly absorption's not happening here. So we need to go back and we need to look right at the core in the gut. And I think that's really important, that wherever we see this issue, whether it be the bone marrow, the eyes, liver, lung, kidney, doesn't matter. None of it starts where it shows up. It's all starting in the gut with that intestinal lining, with the microbe community that's in there, with the acid in the stomach. It's all starting there. And that's the problem, obviously, as we know, with mainstream medicine, that they take this reductionistic approach. They work in silos. We've got a doctor specializing in kidney and someone else in bone marrow. And you know, and when the bone marrow drugs wreck the kidney and the liver, well, then you go to the kidney and the liver specialist and they'll give you something else and that'll wreck another part of the body. So we just got to come back to that gut.
Yeah, it was only about 20 years ago that they started talking about gluten-free. And I just dismissed like, oh, I just thought they were fanatics.
So did I. Yes, me too.
Right? But then, and it was only Dr. Wallach that fully explained it and showed the videos.
Yeah.
I'll realize that then I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yes. And that was like me too. I needed that convincing when I saw, you know, the images, and it made, when someone explained it like that. And I think that's what people need to know, the why. I think the why is really important. If you just say to someone, look, go gluten-free or get off cow's milk or whatever, they must understand the why, that it's important. And when they will generally stick to that.
Even more so, I suppose, is when you start to dive into anemia and all those sorts of things, and the structure and function of livers and that sort of stuff, and you look at the relationship of things like copper and iron. You know, the two are hand in hand, and the folate trap, and some of these other mechanisms that come out, and it gets really
very
complex.
complex. Yeah.
And that's when
and all the educational books, they show the structure. All my anatomy classes, they never introduce the nutrition, and even the chemistry, they never introduce the nutrition part of it. So all that has to change. So I don't know how that's going to change, but that'd be great.
Yeah.
And I think that's where too many people, even in the alternative field, we found they tend to get stuck still on genetics, or they get stuck on, oh, it's a sulfur pathway, or it's histamines this, or it's something. And you think, look, come back. They're all symptoms of what's absent or what's toxic in the body. And if we can modify that, then those other pathways and things will correct themselves and flow on from that. So I think it's so important to move away from that reductionistic. But definitely the language and what we're told, it does keep people confused, and it keeps people uncertain in their own ability to try and heal themselves, because they definitely make it so much more complicated than it actually is. And that leaves people feeling, oh my gosh, I'm not a doctor. I don't know how to do this. No, look, I'm safest to leave it in the doctor's hands. You know, and what we want to tell people is actually, it's like, no.
We're going to keep going, but I'd like to just, in closing, just say one thing. I had an organic chemistry teacher, and she was pregnant, and she would always eat an apple. And I said, well, you say sugar chemically, right? But I said, how come you don't eat a candy bar then? And she wouldn't answer. They'd never answered. So, and yet you know that in the apple, you've got the other nutrients, the other cofactors to break the sugar down.
Yeah, and you've got all the live enzymes and things like that.
The other thing is about keeping the waste system moving and keep that waste going out. You've got to keep that, and that's an apple a day.
Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate you guys.
Absolutely. And Keely wants to know if you have plans to write a book.
That's actually really funny, because I started writing a book about 5 years ago, and it's still, in pieces in the laptop. And I was in that, writing that when Darcy relapsed. And I thought, okay, now I've got more chapters to put on that. But I would love to do that. Yes, that has been started. And yeah, I do want to do that. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent. So whenever you have that ready, we want to help you promote it.
Oh, thank you. And look, the way we wanted to do it was sort of weave Darcy's story through it, but have it as a book that anyone with any condition could pick up and go, how can this help me? And put it in layman's terms. And I think this is the most important thing. We want it so that, you know, if you only made it through 6 years of schooling, we call that, you know, finished primary school here, that you would be able to pick that up and read it, and you would be able to understand it and adopt and employ those strategies in your life. We want it at that level of simplicity that whether you're 10 or whether you're 85, it makes sense to you. You can employ all of those strategies and you will see improvement. So that was my underlying thoughts for the book, how it would go, and Darcy's story, we that to, you know, show how bad things can get, but also, you know, a story that has a happy ending, which people love, a happy ending. I like happy endings.
Yes, we do. We absolutely do. AJ, question, comment?
Yeah, so you opened a can of worms. What's the matter with cow's milk? In 2 sentences.
Yeah, okay. I actually grew up with a house cow. We had normal cow's milk where the cream would float to the top of that milk. And we grew up on that. Now and this is where it all gets tricky with the how much our food chain has been modified and manipulated. So now they're homogenizing it, they're pasteurizing it. Now, what's that doing? It's removing the enzymes that help your body to break down the milk. So when a calf is consuming cow's milk in its natural state, it's got the enzymes there to help break down the sugars. So that's helpful. They also mix it up. They homogenize it. So all the fat disperses in little tiny microparticles through the milk. Now, when that comes into our body goes, that's not how fat's supposed to be. It's in these tiny little molecules that are meant to be larger, and it upsets the whole, how does fat get absorbed in our system properly? So that challenges things. And then on top of that, you've got casein. So milk proteins, you've got whey and you've got casein. Whey that we make into whey powder, which is fantastic on a protein level with its biological value that it has, which is a tremendous, and or the glutamine that's great for gut healing. That's fantastic. The other protein in it called casein is very similar structurally and biochemically to gluten. So for a lot of people, that casein is also rubbing out the gut lining. Now, when we're looking at butter, there's less of that in there because you're looking at the fat, but even better is ghee. You can turn butter into ghee yourself by cooking it up. That's very easy. They used to call that clarified butter as well. It's the same thing. When you turn it to ghee, you remove the lactose and the casein. They get removed. So the problematic components of the dairy get removed. You get left with the good stuff. But butters also can be very nourishing, can be great. But milk itself, because of the way it's been modified, and because of the casein itself. And I've seen a lot of people, once they take dairy milk out, their eczema goes away, their asthma goes away. I've seen it over and over again. Obviously, we don't want to be replacing any of that with margarines and veggie oils and all of that. We're very clear with that. But yeah, be careful.
I suppose the low-hanging fruit, you know, the wheat, barley, oats and rye to start with. And then if you've got problems with dairy, definitely the dairy as well. But
do a pulse test as well. As an individual, we did that, you know, fast for a while. And, you know, that's a whole other thing. Fasting, fabulous, great. But fast for a while, then take your pulse, see what your levels are, 77, 80 beats a minute, whatever it might be. Then consume that particular food that you're concerned with, it has an issue with you, whether that be cow's milk or whether it be something else, a cucumber or capsicum. Wait 15 minutes, take your pulse again, 15 minutes, take it again, 15 minutes, take it again. If that pulse rate rises 10 beats or over, it's a good indication that that is a problem food for you, because it's got the machinery in the body revved up, the immune system's activated. So that can be a good little thing that you can do at home to test that yourself. You'll also notice if you have milk or foods and you get mucusy after them, that mucus is your body trying to wrap those toxins up and get it out, just like when you've got a virus or a cold. So you'll notice, you know, particularly kids, if they're mucusy and ear infections, and we noticed that with our daughter when she finished breastfeeding and we went on to cow's milk and she was just getting recurrent ear infections, and we took cow's milk out. that was the end of that. So yeah. So check yourself. For some people it can be okay, for others it can be quite problematic.
Don't forget butter, butyric acid is really good for you.
Oh,
too.
butter's got so much good stuff in
You know,
it.
you don't,
Yeah.
where possible, we don't want to cut that out.
Yeah.
And it reminds me, in my younger years, I had a hard time with milk. My dad was raised on a farm. We got a milk cow when we moved to our small farm, and we were milking the cow. I could drink that all day long. And I didn't get all mucusy. I didn't have upset stomachs. It was wonderful. Until Dad decided he didn't want to milk anymore, and my little brother and I were graduating. So, yeah, there's really something to be said for raw milk and how God designed it for the body. Wow.
All food, Becca.
Yeah, all
Whole
foods and
food.
how much modification and manipulation. I mean, even if you're eating salmon and that salmon's been farmed and that salmon's been fed wheat and corn and soy meal, the meat of that salmon that you're eating is not the same as the meat of a salmon, out in the wild. And the same is true for eggs. The same is true for, cattle raised on grains. You are eating what you eat eats.
Yeah.
So it changes, it's modified. You've got to try and get your food as clean as you can.
It's funny, the grass-fed revolution that seems to be happening. I mean, we're the farm, our grass-fed finished cattle actually go over to Chipotle over there in the US.
To the US, so
and so manufactured beef over there is people are waking up to it, that it tastes different, the fat contents are different, more inflammatory fats. Getting back over to the grass-fed is important,
because it changes that profile, and it's so important. Like the raw eggs for the fats, the butter, the ghee, the meat, the animal fats. Certainly, we're always telling people fat doesn't make you fat. Don't be afraid of fat. You need fat in your diet. Your cells need to make their membranes out of these fats. They're crucial. And, it certainly hasn't helped with the epidemic we have now of people with cognitive issues, dementia, Alzheimer's. They're on these statin drugs. They're removing fats from their diet. It's an absolute disaster. And, we've got to get back to that basic good eating.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Well, folks, there we covered quite a bit here. The doctor says that there is no hope. Well, if one, you have to follow their instructions or you get in trouble. And then they tell you there's no hope. Don't give up. The body was designed. It is an intelligent being that when it's given the right stuff, the raw ingredients, which I am so thankful for Dr. Wallach and his team and putting together, like you said, all the nutrition in the right ratios, something that's simple to take instead of having that whole pharmacy. I had that whole pharmacy of individual nutrients.
Yeah.
He has made it so easy so that all we have to do is say, put me on the 90 and let the body do what it was designed to do. Thank you so much for joining us here today. If I could get our co-hosts up on the screen again, that would be absolutely fantastic. I love the fact that you want to write your book in layman's terms so it's easy to understand. That's beautiful. And as Keely says, your journey, knowledge, and wisdom of all steps taken is a message of hope. I absolutely agree. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Albert, did you have something else you wanted to say?
Yes, I wanted to ask if Andy and KARLI, do you guys have another hour to spend with us?
Yeah.
We're up. We're up. The kids are in bed, so let's do it. Absolutely.
Get a cup of tea going.
And it's Saturday
we'll
for you.
on.
It's Saturday. That's it. So, we're good.
Thank you so much for being up so early there in Tamworth, Australia, or is it Timworth?
Yeah, Tamworth. Yep, you got it.
Timworth, Australia, the Nashville of Australia. which I absolutely want to come and visit you sometime. And we do want to have you back here on Daily with Doc and Becca, sharing more of what you as scientists have found to be true and what Dr. Wallach's research that, I mean, there's doctors that are just now coming out with it thinking that they just said it, and Dr. Wallach's been saying it for decades. So we just thank you so much for helping us in promoting this whole 90 essential nutrient concept with a real life story of fighting, not giving up, and having a child that's living, breathing, and having a great time as a result of it. Thank you so much for not staying trapped in that medical trap.
Yeah, no,
It's-
thanks for
No,
providing a
thank
platform,
you so
Becca.
much. Yeah, and providing a platform for this information to get out. You know, we really do believe without having found that knowledge and without the longevity products, we're doubtful that Darcy would be here with us today. So look, we are so grateful, and the least we can do is share this information and help others along the way. I just feel it's so important, and that has become our mission now.
And yeah, Wallach, Pharmacist Band, everyone else in that community. That
Incredible.
yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for letting us help you spread as well. Folks, this has been an hour and 45 minutes of information, of hope, of letting the body do what it was designed to do, even after a system that was designed to help us destroyed. The body was able to recover. And that is just one example of many of how magnificent our bodies were designed. So give your body the option of being able to bounce back when given the right nutrients. Get back with the person that shared this program with you. If there is no one to thank, you found it all on your own. I do have a call team standing by at 855-949-3377. Again, that's 855-949-3377. If you want to learn more about the program that Andy and KARLI have put together, they do have a website. Either of you like to share the website with us?
Yeah, sure. It's macromedical.org.
And the reason it's called macro medical is that the importance of the macro approach, looking at the big picture, not the reductionistic, not the micro, the macro. So hence the name macromedical.org.
And we're a .org because, like you, Becca, we're coming at it from a philanthropic aspect. You know, we see charities working at the bottom of the cliff, supplying wheelchairs to people who have fallen off. We're trying to work at the top of the cliff and put a fence up and say, hey, danger ahead, turn around now, here's the way out.
Absolutely. So that's macro, M-A-C-R-O, medical.
Yep, .org.
.org. All right. Well, thank you again, both of you. And thank you to my team for holding the fort while I was away, as we have Albert joining us from South Africa, letting people in as our gatekeeper. Marilyn, as she is doing a lot of typing, doing some dictation into the chat that's only available if you're here live with us. And if you want to join us, we are here Wednesday, Thursday, Friday from 12 to 1 Pacific. That's 1 to 2 Mountain, 2 to 3 Central, 3 to 4 Eastern, and way down in Australia, that is 5 to 6 a.m. the next day. So, and we also have Phyllis, who's out on taking and keeping an eye on the different platforms, bringing in questions and also doing some additional commentary in the chat. Thank you so much, Phyllis. And we have our digital marketing director, who has been very instrumental in helping us get the word out so others can find it. So much. Thank you so much, AJ. And we wish Ruth Ellen traveling mercies, as she is now away for a few days. So everybody, We are an amazing community. And if you feel like you are missing that whole aspect of community and you want something to be a part of greater than yourself and have purpose, Certified Holistic Health Coach course might be what you're looking for. You can find more information about that by going to coach.dailywithdoc.com. Again, that's coach.dailywithdoc.com. And give us a call, 855-949-3377. Thank you again, Andy and Carly Scott, for blessing us with your story, your wisdom, and coming from a scientific background just gives more plausibility to it. Thank you.
Thank you.
But everybody, have a wonderful day. We will see you next week, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, as we have more amazing guests bringing more information to help you create a better health journey. Until next time, bye for now.
This program is for educational purposes only. The content is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any diseases, nor is it intended to take the place of your primary care physician. Statements in this program have not been evaluated by the FDA. As an empowered individual, you do have options available. We're honored to continue and share the teachings of the founding father of science of epigenetics, Dr. Joel Wallach. This program is for educational purposes only. The content is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any diseases, nor is it intended to take the place of your primary care physician. Statements in this program have not been evaluated by the FDA. As an empowered individual, you do have options available. We're honored to continue and share the teachings of the founding father of science of epigenetics, Dr. Joel Wallach.